Hey, it's Ray Steele. Hope you like this, and please hit the subscribe button. Appreciate it. It's the Political Insiders here on WRTV, where we don't have you email the questions in advance, or I don't email them in advance and then handpick the questions that are answered by the insiders. They are Abdul Hakim Shabazz from IndyPolitics.org, Republican Jim Merritt joining us this week, as is Democrat Arielle Brandy. Thanks for being here, y'all. And let's dive into first. Last night, as we record this, Thursday night, President Biden delivered a speech that was previewed quite a bit during the week by everybody who follows politics. This was an address to the nation from Independence Hall in Philadelphia.
There's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology,
in which he specifically called out, as he put it, MAGA Republicans and MAGA forces. One of the direct quotes, MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. And this, of course, leading up to the midterm elections, even though the White House said this was not a political speech, or they insisted it was not a political speech. He did urge Americans to go to the polls. Arielle, let's start with you on the Democratic side. What do you think about the speech? And number two, we haven't heard a lot of Indiana Democrats specifically talking that way a whole lot about what the president called MAGA Republicans, at least not when they're campaigning for the races this November here in Indiana.
Yeah, I thought President Biden's speech was great. I think it was very spot on with what we're seeing in our country right now. We have to realize that there is a threat to democracy. We still have people who are in elective office or choosing to run that do not claim President Biden as their president. They still think that they were cheated through the election process. And I think that President Biden addressed that. We have to realize that right now we have people who are running for office that are election deniers, that they truly believe that Trump is supposed to be their president and still should be their president. And I think this call to action, letting Americans know that this is happening in their country and that this could potentially affect elections for the next couple of years going into 2024, which he addressed. We do have candidates right now who are running that are talking about some of this issue. It might not be framed in the way of MAGA Republicans, but Republican extremists that are running and saying that, this election was a fraud. And it was not. And I think the address that happened with President Biden last night really took a course of action of not, like you said, calling out Democrats and Republicans, but really making it known that there's a threat to democracy right now. And we have to be paying attention as American people.
Fairly recently, the president also used the term semi-fascist to describe what he's now says, or what he said last night, were MAGA Republicans. Jim, some of the Republican reaction to this speech was to insinuate that the president was talking about all Republicans, presumably including yourself, even though he did single out Republicans who were not MAGA Republicans. But the Republican reaction has been to say, look what the president is saying about you in general. Now, my question to you is, how do Republicans take something like this going into the midterm election at a time when there are notably Republicans across the country who seem to be trying to distance themselves from the president, as we learn more and more about what was found in the FBI search at Mar-a-Lago?
Ray, it's good to be with you. And I found it to be a mean speech. And I can't remember the last time a president actually gave a speech that insulted probably half the country. And to answer your question about Trump, I can't really speak to that, but it struck me as when you give a political speech, and that's what it was, is what was the goal and what would people be seeing? I remember Reagan giving a speech in front of the Statue of Liberty and talk about freedom. And last night, with the background being red and the whole vision that America was watching, and I'm not really sure how many people watched it, was it was just a negativity, and as well as I think it goes back to the Hillary deplorable speech, and it just probably energized Republicans to get out to the polls in November. Of course, we're going to have countless we're going to have countless media cycles from now until November 8th. So you just really don't know what's going to happen in the next, 9 weeks. And so he probably energized some people, but I don't know actually how many people watched that speech.
Donald Trump didn't give any mean speeches as president, Jim?
I think he didn't he didn't come across and insult the whole Democrat Party. You saw
He insulted a little bit of everybody at times.
well, the bottom line though is Donald Trump brought a lot of people to the Republican Party that actually didn't vote for it before, and so I think it's a quite a different situation with President Biden last night.
How different is it really, Abdul, do you think? I mean, this is the president has gotten more bold in his language, certainly, over the last few weeks, given the Dobbs decision on abortion at the Supreme Court, given the fact that he got his Inflation Reduction Act, the climate bill passed through Congress. His approval rating, though still underwater, if you look at traditional measures, has noticeably ticked upward. What do you think about the president's move toward this type of language? Is this just par for the course, given that we're just a couple months out from Election Day?
Well, actually, it's interesting because I'm coming to you today from the University of Indianapolis, where I teach mass communications. And actually, it's funny because today we're talking about knowing who your audience is. And I think that's crucial with this discussion because the president was actually talking to, in my opinion, those non-Donald Trump Republicans, not the MAGA Republicans who are almost like a cult to a certain degree. But no, the president was talking to those independent and moderate Republicans. Those are the Republicans who voted in Alaska that put a Democrat in office for the first time. Those are the Republicans who voted in the New York Special District 19. Those are the Republicans who voted to not amend the Kansas Constitution to not allow for abortion. That's who the president was actually speaking to. That's who he was addressing. That's why when he said Republicans, he put that MAGA Republicans in front of it. Now, is that going to make a difference? 70 days after the election? Well, like Jim said, there are countless news cycles between now and then, so that remains to be seen. But that's who the president was speaking with. That's who he was talking to. Those independent, moderate Republicans who aren't crazy about Donald Trump, but maybe aren't fully convinced that Democrats are the way to go in the midterm elections.
Well, what I've heard from Abdul, and I'll address this to Arielle Brandy, is one of those Democrats trying to talk to Republicans, perhaps of that ilk, is Destiny Wells, who is the Democratic nominee for Secretary of State here in Indiana. Destiny had a tweet a couple days ago that I found interesting. She said that Indiana is not a red state. Indiana is a purple state with a turnout problem. So that obviously is something that she is trying to capitalize on. But at the same time, it seems like she has not been shy about courting those Republican voters who might not be inclined to lean toward the Trump wing of the party.
Absolutely. And she's been talking to everyone, Democrats, Republicans, independents. And we have to realize, and we know this, we're all folks that are, involved in politics and pay attention. Indiana is not always just solidly a red state. We have gone blue before. We know that Hoosier voters will vote for a candidate that will best represent them. And we also know that sometimes they don't just vote on party lines. And I think this is going to be one of those election years where voters are really going to be paying attention to people who they want to elect into office that are actually going to want to follow democracy, and also taking a look at those that are aligning with the issues that are best to them and their Hoosier families. Destiny Wells is doing a great job at really honing in on the fact that, yes, Indiana is 46th in voter turnout, which is horrible. We need to be able to help increase that. And so by having that strong talking point and getting Hoosiers to understand that we're not always just this deep red state that the nation paints us to be. We are actually a state that will vote in alignment with our issues when we have the right candidates that are running. And I think we have that right now at this election cycle. And Destiny Wells is that candidate to get the work done.
Well, before I ask a question of Jim, how do you solve that turnout problem? Because turnout was up. It might still have been low by national standards in 2020, but turnout was up quite a bit in Indiana. And Republicans still carried the state easily. Donald Trump still carried the state easily. And part of that may have been that while turnout was up in the Democratic stronghold, say Indianapolis and the donut counties, it was not up as much here as it was in other parts of the state.
Well, I think with turnout, what we're seeing right now is that we have a lot of issues that voters are paying a lot of attention to. And I think, and a lot of people have different opinions about this, but the overturn of Roe is going to be something that is going to draw people out this election cycle. We're hearing it already. Women, men, young people, everyone in between is paying attention and is enraged with what is happening right now in this country. So it's not only the threat of democracy, it's also the taking away of rights right here in our very own state that I think is going to really propel people to get out and vote. And I think people are frustrated. I don't think it's going to be Republicans are going to directly align with incumbents or people who have ran before or new candidates, especially if they're more on the extreme side of the spectrum. And I think for Democrats, they're ready for someone who's actually going to give a damn about them right now. And I think that that's something that's going to help increase turnout. Roe is going to be something that gets not only women out to vote, but men and young people out to vote. And I'm excited to see what happens with turnout this time. I think we have an opportunity to really change the course of what's happening here in our state.
Jim, Todd Young, Senator Young was in town, or he's been touring the state talking about gas prices a lot lately. The thinking is, and I guess we'll see if this bears out at the polls, that people are going to respond to something like that more than they are going to respond to the abortion question. At least that's what Senator Young is counting on.
You know, elections 99% of the time are about either someone being at the top of the ticket, like Barack Obama when Indiana went blue, or the idea of an issue. I can't remember when an issue such as abortion or anything that you would think of that would be outside of a pocketbook issue. I think people will go if there's something to lure people to the polls. It'll be a pocketbook issue. When you talk about if you talk about inflation, you talk about the price of gas, and it just all depends on in September and October what the Republicans actually focus on and talk about and resonates at the quote unquote breakfast room table.
Speaking of Senator Young, there was an interesting poll out this week, Abdul, that was commissioned by his Democratic opponent, Tom McDermott, which showed the race, unlike basically any conventional wisdom thinking from pretty much everyone, I would think, in Indiana, no disrespect to Democrats, but I think Democrats would say the same thing, is that the race between Senator Young and Tom McDermott was within the margin of error. Senator Young with a 3-point lead. Abdul, first of all, any reason at all to believe anything about that poll, even though it looks like their metrics are okay, it looks like their methodology might have been okay, but my gut reaction is there's no way.
Well, the pollster that Tom McDermott's campaign used was Change Research, and I actually used them before a couple of years ago in the governor's race between Governor Eric Holcomb, Don Rainwater, and Dr. Woody Myers. And what I remind folks is polls are not predictions; they're snapshots in time. So a poll is right up until it isn't anymore. Now, granted, Change Research use Facebook and a lot of online social media presence to get folks to respond, and sometimes that's a little bit tricky because people would like to go to Facebook to complain about something. And so you automatically sort of have that sort of embedded in the poll. So you got to keep that in mind. We'll actually be doing some polling ourselves around the end of this month using ARW strategies. We're going to poll the Secretary of State's race, the U.S. Senate race, and the Marion County Prosecutor's race. But once again, those aren't predictions; they're snapshots in time. And what's interesting is some of my libertarian friends have been complaining because they didn't include James Siniak's name in the poll. So they say the poll doesn't work. Like, well, yes, it does, because James Siniak is in that 13% sort of undecided. He's probably pulled about 6 or 7% on a good day. So we got to keep that in mind whenever we look at polls, because first and foremost, they're not predictions; they're merely snapshots in time. Now, we can look at trends, and after a while, we see trends start to pop up and develop. That'll let us know what's really going on. But predictions, no; snapshots, yes.
Yeah, no disrespect to libertarians, but when they start polling double digits consistently in statewide elections, then I think we can talk. Jim, any reason for Senator Young to be concerned, whether it's the poll or whether it's just the overall mood right now, given, as Abdul pointed out, a lot of Democratic victories, including in Alaska and traditionally non-Democratic areas. Any reason for Senator Young to be concerned right now?
No, I had chuckled when I saw this on an online poll. You have something called a GoFundMe page. Well, this is a Go Like Me poll. And so I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever. I find it, when I looked at it, Abdul, as being very unscientific. And I look at Todd Young to probably be about 65-70% candidate in November for the election. I think he's rolling. I think he attracts a lot of different Democrats and Republicans, and I think he's going to be very safe. And he's out actively knocking on doors and working around the state, and I think his campaign is going to be just fine.
Arielle, Mr. McDermott, and Democrats around the state kind of took some heart at this poll, even if in their gut maybe they thought maybe that's a little too difficult to believe right now. We know, I think, that polling is broken nationwide. We've known that for about 6 or 7 years now, as we found out in national races. But at the same time, this could perhaps give Tom McDermott some momentum, some attention nationally. It hasn't yet been enough, though, to seemingly get any massive support from national Democrats and from national Democrat fundraising sources to help his campaign. Do you think that will change between now and November?
I do. And I do think that regardless of everyone's feelings about polling, I've been able to be on the ground with Mayor Tom and while he's running his race for U.S. Senate. And he's talking to everyone, Democrats, Republicans. He's got the support from both sides of the aisle. So I think that we have a very strong chance at being able to shock people come November 8th when it comes to this race. I mean, right now we can see that there are Hoosiers right now that are unfortunately not very happy with Senator Young and what he's been doing to represent us in DC. I mean, he's voted against some of the very things that are the heart of the issues of people here in our state, against veterans, against seniors and insulin caps, but also too not standing up for women and their right to be able to choose. These are things that are going to be in the minds of Hoosiers when they show up at the polls. And the person that has been actively supportive of all of those issues right now is Tom McDermott. And so while everyone may have their feelings about this poll, the facts are there that people are not pleased with Senator Young right now and what he's been delivering for the state of Indiana. And I think that we have a very strong chance at being able to pick up the seat, and we will be able to see Tom McDermott become our next U.S. Senator. That's just the reality of where we're at right now. And I've been able to see it firsthand while he's been on the ground. We're winning over some strong Republicans right now. And I think that that is something that people should be taking a look at.
Our political insiders, Democrat Arielle Brandy, Republican Jim Merritt, Abdul Hakim Shabazz from IndyPolitics.org, and check out his cheat sheet that you can subscribe to as well. There's your free plug, my friend.
And happy anniversary to my lovely wife. If I don't do that, I'll be in big trouble come Monday.
Happy anniversary, and God bless Mrs. Abdul for being there. Y'all take care. Have a good weekend.
Take care.